everybody, and welcome to our great session with our unique guest, Tim Yu. We are pleased to have over here over our show today, Quiet Leadership for Introverts by BeMore Festival 2024. I'm really feeling and motivated by having you over here, Tim, and glad to be over this session to go deeper and deeper over one of the most important topics on our field that has been recently attracting everyone's attention. So, hi, Cam, and we are ready to go over our journey today. So, let's go, my friend.
Thank you so much, Azim. To everyone that's watching in, to all the introverts, to all the extroverts, to all the ambiverts and the quiet achievers that are watching this, my name is Tim Yo. And for the last 40 plus years, I've been an introvert. And for me, this is what introversion feels like. Small talk is really hard for me. So I grew up in Singapore. And for anyone that has lived or traveled in Asia, you will probably agree. People back home, we don't talk to random strangers on the street. Most of us will be reading a book or staring at our phones, like normal people do. But instead, when I moved to Australia about 12, 13 years ago, and then now I'm based in Adelaide, in a Western society, you could be in a queue waiting for a bus, a tram, a train, even the toilet. Somehow, small talk just creeps up on you when you least expect it. So I had to learn how to talk to people about the weather, asking how they are, what their plans are for the weekend. And in the beginning, when people asked me how I was, I actually told them. And then I quickly realized that I was probably oversharing, or they were not that interested to begin with. They were really just saying hi. Because for me, too much social interaction is exhausting. Even if its social interactions are the kind that I like with friends and family. If this conference was in real life and it's not remote, sometimes I will need to actually step away to have some quiet time to actually recharge. Now, before we go any further, there are a few myths about introversion that I'd like to dispel. Firstly, introversion is not about being shy. Being shy is a fear of social judgment, which means even an extrovert can be shy. Rather, introversion and extroversion is about how we respond to stimulation, where stimulation can be social interactions, working in noisy environments, working in open plan offices, for example. So, for an introvert to operate at their best, they require an environment that has less stimulation, and vice versa for extroverts. Next, introversion and extroversion are not an absolute. How an introvert or an extrovert behaves really depends on the context, the environment, and the people that are around you at the time. No one is truly an introvert or an extrovert all of the time. Now, in 2012, Susan Cain gave a TED talk called The Power of Introverts. It was Susan that really inspired this talk that I'm giving right now. She said that when she was growing up, she felt like her quiet, introverted way was wrong. Wrong. Like imagine that. Imagine as you are growing up, thinking that the way that you are is wrong. She also said that we live in a world where the extrovert ideal is desired. And as a design leader, this certainly feels true to me. Because when people paint a picture of what they expect a leader to look like, It often looks something like this. A leader commands the center of attention. A leader is outgoing, is talkative, is dominant. A leader is able to deliver charismatic speeches, rallying large audiences at the drop of a hat. A leader is, in essence, an extrovert. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad way to lead. I'm saying that this is not the only way to lead. And it's certainly not all the time, which then begs the question, right? If we can accept that the world is the way that it is, a world that desires extroverts, then how can we as introverted leaders operate successfully within it? You know, if you are an introvert and a designer and you're happy in a individual contributor role, you can probably get away by focusing on pushing pixels. But if you want to lead, especially people leadership, then your pixels are now people. And you cannot push people the same way that you push pixels. So, how can an introverted leader succeed? Now, the answer to this question is not be more extroverted. That is not the answer. You know, I know that because I tried that. It is lame. It always felt unnatural. Instead, the techniques I'll be sharing with you in this talk have allowed me to remain my true authentic self. Or, in other words, how can we use our introverted ways not as a flaw, not as if there is something wrong with us, but to use our introverted ways as a superpower? Now, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the distributed or the hybrid way that we all seem to live and work in today. You know, the way that we are working in today has changed. And even though the lucky ones amongst us find ourselves in good health and we still have a job, you know, those same expectations and those norms and those projected beliefs of what a leader looks like, they still persist. And they persist through those tiny lenses on the webcams of our computers and on our laptops, where we actually look our best from the waist up on video calls, just like this one, through to the peers and to the audiences that we work with and the teams that we lead. You know, case in point, I started a new role in April 2020. Actually, since that time, I have started two new roles. And at that time, I have not met some of the colleagues face to face in both of those roles. And at the start of the COVID pandemic, you know, when I first started my first role fully remote, I was leading a team in a company that was also, like for many of us, we were new to remote for the very first time. You know, all of a sudden, for all of us at the time, remote was the new normal. At that time, I had never worked remote. At the time, I had never led a remote team. You know, so much of the leadership that I did up until that point, it was done in person, peer to peer, side by side, face to face. You know, being in the room to read the room. And then just like that, all of that was gone. So back then I wondered, you know, in this new normal, will I, as an introverted leader, thrive or wilt? Will this new normal be a boom or bust for introverts like me? And will my techniques, all of these introverted superpowers that I thought I had, will they still serve me well when I'm working in a fully remote world? Now, the short answer to this is yes, but with a few tweaks. And in this version of the talk, I'll be sharing with you some of the new techniques that I've learned to lead as an introvert in a world that works remote. And I'll be sharing them around four areas. They are meetings, team management, social media, and then lastly, networking. We're going to start off with meetings first because everybody loves meetings, right? Like you open up your work calendar and you see that there is some white space. Great, we have more time to add yet another meeting. By far, my favorite type of meeting has to be one on ones. As an introvert, you only have to focus on one person, not a group of people who are competing for attention. More importantly, it is away from the public eye. People are more open to being wrong when no one else is looking. They are also more open to tell you what they really think when nobody else is listening. And when you're working remote, one on ones are more important than ever because bumping into someone at the water cooler or at the pantry, it just does not happen anymore because these people are just no longer beside you. You cannot just turn around your chair and then ask somebody a quick question because you are no longer in the same room. Scheduling one on ones with your peers and your leaders, you have to do this intentionally so that staying connected is not left to chance. Next, the other thing you want to do is to actually start arriving at virtual meetings early. In real life, meetings tend to happen in rooms, around tables where you might be sitting side by side or across from each other. And meetings in real life are bound by time and space. Sometimes you just cannot get to the next meeting quick enough because your next meeting is actually 3 floors up in the different building. But this is not the case when you're working remotely. Because when you're working remote, your meetings happen virtually. And your next meeting is just a click away, literally just a click away. And the one thing that remains true about meetings in real life and when you work remotely is that there is always someone who is late. Someone whose arrival that you are waiting for so that the meeting can finally begin. There is no point to actually start the meeting early because you are just going to have to repeat all the things that you said all over again when the late person finally arrives. So you might be wondering why do you arrive at meetings early then? You arrive early because in this small pocket of time, you are alone with the punctual attendees. And then not everyone actually arrives at the same time. So by arriving early, it actually gives you this precious one on one time to connect with the people that you work with. Sometimes it is your team that is early, other times it's going to be your boss or your boss's boss. And you can use this opportunity to practice small talk. You can ask them what they had for lunch. If you notice that they're wearing a new shirt, you can point it out. You can ask them how did your partner's interview go, or whether their baby slept through the night finally. These small minutes that are between meetings are when people actually speak a lot more freely, when nobody else is there to listen. And it's an opportunity for you to connect on a more human level. By arriving early, you get to actually ask people how they truly are, especially when you're working remote. And you will never have that opportunity if you arrive late. So arrive at virtual meetings early. Now, sometimes you find yourself in a meeting, right? And then somebody in the meeting asks a question, and it's a very interesting question. It's one that's really caught your interest. And then your brain is on it, the gears are turning, all the synapses are firing, and the ideas are emerging. You can kind of see the shape of it, and it's cloudy, but it's not fully formed yet. And then all of a sudden, someone in the room calls out, "Hey, Tim, what do you think?" And then you can almost feel like the blood is draining from your face. and then everyone is looking at you now. Your mind is racing. You're not ready. This great idea that you were thinking of just moments earlier that was inside your head, poof, it's gone. You don't know what to say. You make some excuses, you make some nervous noises, and then you hope that the attention passes on to somebody else. And then later on, you are kicking yourself for not speaking up. Now, this comes up in a lot of conversations I have with quiet achievers. How do you speak up before you are ready? Well, the thing that you have to do is to actually give yourself permission and license to speak up before you are ready. And that license, that permission or license, it could sound something like this. This might sound really silly, but it's not fully formed yet. But this is what I have so far. Another one you can try is, it's not fully formed yet, but this is what has come to mind that I have right now. I don't really know if I fully believe what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. Now, by prefacing, having this prefix of what you're about to say, this serves as that permission, that license for you to say it. Even though you are not really 100% ready to actually share your thinking or it's fully formed. And that's okay because you just told everyone that it's not fully formed yet, right? Maybe you are not even close. Maybe you're not even close to being ready. Maybe you actually do need a little bit more time to process your thinking. But then that microphone has now been passed to you. Now, in this case, you can say, you know what? I need a little bit more time to process. Is it okay if you go to John first and then after John is done, you come back to me? Now, other times you are ready. You got this thing that you want to say. And something seems to hold you back because you never really enjoyed the spotlight of everyone's gaze, everyone looking at you. But then what you have to say, is important and you know that it is meaningful. Now, in these kind of moments, you have to train yourself to raise your hand or to somehow signal that you have something to say before your brain actually kicks in and starts making excuses not to speak up. I know because I'm the king of excuses. Now, doing this, by signaling that you have something to say, it then quickly shifts your mind from making excuses not to speak up. It shifts your mind and focus to thinking about how you're going to say what you're about to say. The important thing you have to realize is this: you were invited to this meeting for a reason. It is important to speak up because no one can read your mind yet. To participate in the discussion is to be a team player. So speak up to be a player on your team. Now, last point about meetings are what I call high stakes meetings. A high stakes meeting is one where an ultimate decision has to be made, right? It's a go or no go decision. Chances are your boss is there and your boss's boss is there too. And the people in this room tend to have strong opinions and loud voices. So, as a quiet achiever, what do you do? Now, I've been to a few of these high stakes meetings, and I think that there is a secret to them. And the secret is this: people who attend these meetings have most likely made up their minds before the meeting itself. So, the tactic here for you is to influence the outcome before the meeting, not during. So, let's think about the audience here for a second, right? These high stakes meetings, they usually involve senior executives. And senior executives usually have more experience. Senior executives also tend to have more things to focus on and less time to make decisions. Also, very few single decisions would lead to very few single decisions will actually truly break a company. It's usually a series of poor decisions that will actually break the company. So when you think about it, in such cases, senior executives would usually lean onto their prior experience in order to help them make decisions quickly. Now, once these decisions are solidified in their minds, in my experience, it is very hard to change them. So, what do? You have one on ones, hours, days, weeks, or even months before the meeting. How far in advance depends on how high the stakes are. Now, the goal here is really to influence their thinking before they make up their minds, right? You get to explain your position, you get to explain your rationale. You can also ask them what they think. And if it's a one on one meeting, people are more open to being wrong or to say, I don't know. Think of it like steering a container ship. Now, a container ship takes 20 full minutes to come to a full stop. So, if you want to change the course of a container ship, you have to start steering early, really early. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about working hybrid. Now, when people say hybrid, really all I see in my experience are people who are sitting in offices, sitting at their office desk on Zoom calls. And the difference is that you're in the office and you're not at home in the comfort of your sweatpants. Now, the way that I see most people doing hybrid, I'm not really sure that it's working. When most people are working under one roof was formerly the norm, that just simply isn't true anymore. And if you are working in a global team where you have offices all around the world, having everyone under one roof was never going to be the case in the first place. And I know many people are still trying to figure out how they can make hybrid work. The important thing here is this: don't treat people who are not in the office as second class citizens. You know, there's a saying, if one person is remote, then all of us are remote. It could be very simple things like using a virtual whiteboard instead of one that happens to be in the meeting room. It could be simple things like having a very good microphone so that everyone can hear you and have a good experience. It's fine if you actually have a hallway water cooler conversation, but you have to remember to keep others in the loop. Otherwise, you will not be aligned or you'll not all be aware. And then people will start feeling left out. In the last 4 years that I've been working remotely, I've never felt more seen or more heard compared to the last 18 years that I've actually worked in design. Whether you're on Zoom, on Google Meets, or on WebEx, everyone is on an equal playing field. And people actually have to take turns to speak because you can't actually speak over other people anymore. So if you put into practice some of these techniques, I guarantee it, you will be heard and you will be seen. Now we're going to switch gears and we'll start talking about team management. When it comes to hiring, I have always tried to hire for our team's weaknesses. And as a quiet person, I knew that I was always going to need some social butterflies because work is a team sport, and having social butterflies can actually help you build bridges across teams, across a company, and across our industry. And these connections that your social butterflies help you make, they can extend the circles of influence and the impact that we designers and our teams can have on the work that we do. Now, it doesn't matter that working remotely makes it harder for butterflies to socialize. Butterflies will find a way to do what butterflies do. It doesn't mean that every team member has to be a social butterfly. It also does not absolve you, the design leader, from the need to actually build your own relationships. But you know what? It wouldn't hurt if there were a few members of your team that this trait came to very naturally to some of your people, because they are people that you can lean on when you, as a quiet person, are maxed out on social interactions. The next thing you want to think about with team management is thinking about how you want to play your role. People assume with things like leadership styles, they assume that we each have a fixed style, that it is fixed and this style cannot be changed. That's what they assume. But the reality that I found is that we actually have a preferred style, a style that we prefer, and it is not fixed. And just like in our personal lives, we each play different roles depending on the situation and the context that we are in that moment. We might be a mother to our children. You might be a UI designer on our team. You might be the cook in the home kitchen preparing a dish for the very first time. All these roles that I just mentioned, they are all played by the same one person. The trick here is really knowing and recognizing the role that we need to play, and then knowing what it takes to actually play that role successfully. So we can then adapt and adopt those behaviors and then perform those roles in those situations successfully. Now, we're going to turn our attention to social media. In my opinion, social media is a gift from the introvert gods. Before public speaking, like what I'm doing right now, it's one of the best ways for us to actually broadcast our thoughts and ideas. But when you think about it, for quiet achievers like us, we do not respond as well to public speaking as extroverts do. But with social media, we quiet achievers can reach across continents, across time zones, all on our own terms, from behind the safety of our screen. And at no time has, social media been more important for people like us than now. So if you wanted to argue with Jared Spool about why everyone is not a designer, you can just tweet him. You can send him a DM. All of a sudden, all of the people, all of the thought leaders that we respect are right there at our fingertips. And if you are an introvert or quiet achiever like me, having a few handfuls of deep, meaningful conversations means so much more than plenty of shallow, forgettable ones. Also, if these conversations that you have, if they happen in public channels, they represent your thought leadership. You are what you write, share, and tweet. What you say and how you say it will represent who you are. So, how do you start having more visibility, having more influence on social media if you are a quiet achiever like me? Here are a few things that you can try. First of all, not everything has to be a blog post. People have this false expectation that if you want to be a thought leader, no, that everything that you write or post has to be an essay, an article. It's got to be a thesis that you have to write a book. Then you can be a thought leader. The reality is that most of us simply do not have the time or the headspace to write down everything in long form. Instead, you can think of the content that you post in three sizes. They can be small, medium, and large, right? So, small can be something as simple as liking or adding a comment to something that somebody else has said, and then offering your point of view. It might even be retweeting or resharing something funny or thought provoking as a meme that has come up on your feed. Chat small is something that you can do in roughly 1 minute or less. Medium might be a review of an article that you've just read. And now you are resharing with your network, but you are adding your perspective. Medium might also be an opinion that you have. Medium doesn't have to be very long in length. It could be less than 160 characters. It's really up to you. Medium is something, it could even be a 2 minute video that you make. Finally, a large can be something that is much longer form, like a blog post. The key thing you need to remember is this: when you vary the size of the content you make, you actually give yourself more options in the quantity of content that you create without sacrificing the quality of what you're making. So think of content in three sizes: small, medium, and large. Now, as a final point on social media, I wanted to talk about some of the common limiting beliefs that I've heard from quiet achievers who don't want to share, that they don't want to speak up on social media. Some of the things that I heard are things like, oh, I don't have enough experience. Maybe one day when I've worked longer in this industry, then people will actually pay attention. Or they might say, what I want to say, somebody else has already said it by other people. It's not new. It is, no one is really going to listen to what I'm going to say because it's been said before. Now, I'm here to tell you this. If what you have to say is true, it is authentic, it is true to you, it is authentic, and it comes straight from your heart, you will have an audience. There are people out there who need to hear what you have to say. The best advice I can give you if you're thinking like this is this: your perspective is always unique and is always interesting. You just have to say it. Now, we're going to arrive at every quiet achiever's favorite activity: networking. Oh my gosh, how much do we introverts love networking? If it's not obvious, I'm being sarcastic. Networking is just one of those activities that somehow magically combines all of the things that we introverts, that we quiet achievers do not enjoy. And if this was happening in real life, networking will mostly happen like this. You arrive into a room full of strangers. You then grab a drink, and then you stand awkwardly on the side, just quietly scanning the room, hoping that somebody will make eye contact with you. And then you see other people that are just like you, scattered around the perimeter. But then you dread having to go up to them and then making small talk again. So you just stand there with your drink in hand and then stare at your phone. Now, clearly, networking does not come naturally to me. And since I'm working remotely, I no longer have to really make excuses about not attending networking events anymore. Nevertheless, I knew that it was important as a leader for me to actually extend my network. Because for me, when I think about networking, the goal of networking really is resourcefulness. It is to grow the pool of people that I know who I can help and who can help me. It is something that I needed to do to become a better leader. But how do you actually network if you're working remotely like me? When maybe networking events are no longer something that happens or that you can go to. Now, here are a few techniques that you can try. First of all, you can do pre-work about the attendees that you like to meet. Now, even if it's a meetup or if it's a conference that's gone virtual, just like this one, they still have a list of attendees. You can still find out people that are attending. Quite simply, you can go through the list and then you can actually pick out the people that you would like to meet. You can look them up online. You can say hi to them on LinkedIn or on X or any social media platform. With virtual conferences like this one, it has never been easier to network on your own terms. Next, you want to always be networking methodically and consistently. Extroverts actually gain energy from having interactions with people. But then for quiet people like me, we tend to lose energy, even if the conversations that we're having are stimulating. Now, the trick here is to be consistent and methodical with your networking. You want to have a system. You can be spending 15 minutes of your morning really just serendipitously stumbling onto people on LinkedIn or Twitter. You can reach out to them. Maybe they are already having a conversation and you can join it. You can talk to them about something they have recently posted online. And if they're keen, as the conversation goes on, you can start exchanging direct messages or even organize a one on one catch up over a video call. By being methodical and consistent, you don't leave networking to chance. For me, doing 15 minutes of this every morning, it's less draining compared to doing 1 hour of circulating a room full of strangers once a month. Also, don't just network with the people that can help you. You can reach out to people that you can help as well. Now in our current climate, more than ever, people need all the help that they can get. It could be simple things as reviewing portfolios or giving people feedback on their CVs. It's about sharing stories about how you adapted to remote working or how you actually started interviewing and eventually found a job. To those people that lost their jobs during this period, you can help people make introductions to other people in your network who might be looking for work. Our design community never fails to surprise me how willing we are to help each other out. You also get to meet new people and you get to keep passing that goodwill forward. And then one day, you will get the chance to say, "Hey, I know that someone can help you. Let me introduce you." Now, this next technique is a bit of a Jedi mind trick. What if, when you were networking, you pretended that it was user research? Now, by pretending that it's user research, this collection of strangers suddenly turns into opportunities to learn about people. Who are they? What do they do? Why are they here at this networking event? What do they want to get out of this event? Maybe I can help them. Maybe they can help me. Now, through this lens, small talk questions come a lot more naturally. You just have to remember not to ask questions all the time, because if you do that, it will feel more like a interrogation rather than a conversation. Now, when you're networking, you want to have some measurable output. It might be exchanging contact details or adding the person on LinkedIn or on your social media platform. You have to remember the goal here on networking is to be more resourceful by growing the pool of people that you know. You can't do that if you don't know how to contact the person again when you actually need them. Now, if those of you, for those of you that are watching this presentation, if you guys are using a smartphone and you guys have the LinkedIn app, a lot of people actually use the LinkedIn app for networking and to connect with people that they want to work with. What you might notice is at the top on the search bar on the right, if you're looking at your app right now, you might see a little QR code. Now, if you want to actually connect with a person and you want to exchange your details, here's a pro tip of how you can actually do that simply. All you got to do is to simply click on the QR code and your QR code will come up. Then all the other person has to do is to take out their smartphone, scan your QR code, and they'll be able to connect with you on LinkedIn. And then you take away, there are some scenarios where you're trying to connect to the person, or you don't know how to spell their name. And then you're there trying to find the person, and you can't find the person at all. There's a much simpler way for you to do this. And one of those ways is to connect using the QR code. So for my daily quota, and I'm doing this methodically and consistently, this is my daily quota for networking. This is probably going to be the biggest QR code that you're going to see here today. So if you guys want to take a second to take out your smartphones or your devices, if not, just grab a screenshot, scan the QR code if you want to follow me on LinkedIn. You'll be able to see the stuff that I write about, the things that I spoke about earlier, the small, medium, large content that I share on social media. It's your opportunity to find an easy way to connect with me if you want to scan this QR code and follow me on LinkedIn. Now, if you've made all this effort networking, right, to get to know this one person, met this person, and you actually genuinely like this person, right? They are someone that you can see yourself actually hanging out with. Now, interesting people probably know other interesting people as well that you should meet. So, why do you actually stop at one? When networking, don't stop at one. You can actually ask this new connection to introduce you to two other people that you should meet, and you can do the same. Next, have an exit script. When you're networking, sometimes conversations they just come to a natural end. We just run out of things to talk about. What you must know is that this is totally okay. Rather than awkward silences, you can have an exit script so that you can leave and start another conversation with someone else more interesting. Practice, practice, practice your exit script. You want to repeat it until it comes out naturally. And it could sound something like this, right? You can say, "Hey, John, I really enjoyed speaking with you. I feel like we have a lot in common. Are there two other interesting people you know that you think I should meet? Could you introduce me? I'm very happy to do the same." And who says that networking has to be a group activity? Now more than ever, networking online, maybe even a video call with people that you don't know, is the new normal. You can always reach out to people that you like to meet and arrange for a catch up to talk shop. One on ones are a really good way for you to get to know someone better. Now, before we close off, if you've enjoyed this talk, I wanted to share with you that I recently launched my book, and it's called The Quiet Achiever. And it's full of tiny habits to help you have impact at work without pretending to be an extrovert. Over on the corner, you can see a little QR code. If you scan it, you'll be able to visit my website about the book. It's available as an ebook, as a physical book, as an audiobook, any kind of book that you actually like to read is available in all the different formats on Audible, on Kindle, and direct. If you like this talk, feel free to scan the code and then check out the book. Now, in closing, I wanted to bring our attention back to Susan Cain's talk and the extrovert ideal. The world may continue to favor extroverts as leaders, but I hope that I've convinced you that we introverts, we quiet achievers, I hope I convince you that we have our place as effective leaders as well. This talk, it's never been intended to be introverts versus extroverts. I think that we all have a role to play. And I hope that the techniques I shared here in this talk can be put to good use by introverts and extroverts alike. For those of you that are watching this who are like me, I want you to know that there is another path, that there is another way that we can have impact at work without pretending to be someone we are not. You don't have to be loud. There is another path. And my path is really the sum of tiny habits done well, accumulated over time. Because comparing myself to others was my recipe for misery. All you have to do is to really show up as the best version of yourself. Stop living someone else's version of success. You are enough. Because introversion is not a flaw. Introversion is not a disability. It's a superpower. And I hope that you will let your superpower shine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, my friend, for such valuable and healing session. As we are saying, we always need something that could really take us from our world to another world, uh, gives us some push uh, to go ahead and launches the rocket. So thanks so much for such a great session. Uh, I've totally gotten deeper and deeper inside myself, thinking about so many things, thinking about how to get out of this circle which people are just pushing you to stay in and use your own skills and trust yourself and go ahead and just go above and beyond. So thank you so much, Tam, for this great session. Right now, we are going to move to the Q&A section. I hope that my voice is not glitching.
A little bit. But if you wanted to
Thank
pose some of these questions, if the sound is not so good, you can actually post the questions maybe on chat, and I'm happy to take those questions and ask them and answer them.
Okay, okay, there's no problem. I'm going to show them on the stage. We are going to start with the most voted ones. Okay, uh, the first one uh, by Venus. She says, "Thank you so much for sharing your learnings, Tim, and thoughts on what strategies can be employed to build influence and inspire others without relying on traditional extroverted barriers."
Cool. This is actually pretty cool. I can just read the question. I can answer it. Is it okay if you actually put the question up again so I can look at it? There we go. Thank you so much. So the person who wrote your initials are BS from San Francisco. I think the key thing for me when I was thinking about how I operated for a very long time, there were very few role models of what a good leader actually looks like. When you think about it, when we look at who are the role models of good leaders or people that we respect and look up to, So many of them, even today, tend to be that extrovert ideal, right? Part of the thing that I'm hoping to achieve with the book is that you'll actually encourage, it's not true that the only leaders in the world are extroverted. It's not true. It is just, I think, because I know I've met quite a few introverted leaders who are leaders, but they just simply do not put their hand up or don't stand out as introverted leader. They don't come out and actually say this is who they are. So the key thing here really is to understand that there is actually a different path to success. When you think about this, when you're asking for things like strategies and those tiny habits, it's really everything that I share in the talk. It's also everything that I share in the book. It is really about doing all these tiny things well accumulated over time. So those could be things like, how do you speak up and perform in meetings? How do you do public speaking well? How do you handle difficult conversations? How do you say no politely? How do you make small talk? How do you introduce yourself with confidence? On its own, each one of these things are really small things. But when you're talking about having more visibility, having more influence, it is really the sum and accumulation of the impact that you have across doing all of these tiny habits consistently that has given me the impact and influence that I've always wanted. It is not like how other people might be doing it. It is not singular moments of bravado where this person, maybe they are more extroverted in nature and they seem to have this charismatic one time big presentation and everyone stands up and applauds them and seems to convince and influence everyone. This might be their way. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. I hope it does. If it doesn't quite answer your question, feel free to ask a follow-up question and I'll pass back to you, Hazi.
Okay, we are going to move to the second voted question.
So the question here on the screen is, how can we adapt this style to inspire and influence teams while staying true to our natural strengths? So one of the things that I mentioned in the book about having one of the techniques that has a really good and strong impact on teams is a very simple technique of getting comfortable with recording short videos of yourself. Now, through working remotely through the COVID pandemic, when we started working remotely, not all of us were online and in the same meeting at the same time. Now, even if we could schedule a meeting that was going to be 2 weeks later, when finally everyone can actually be in one meeting, when you think about it, it actually doesn't really make sense. Because when you schedule and work on a meeting culture like this, and you work in a global team, it's going to be too early or too late for somebody on the call. The nice thing of getting comfortable with recording a short video of yourself is that you can then share your thinking in your own time where you perform your best. And then if you're doing, let's say you're a designer and you're doing a design critique where you're actually showcasing your design. For a very short 3 to 5 minute video, you can just share what you're working on in that design and you can share it to everybody else. You can record it once and you can actually share it many times. So you don't have to call multiple meetings just to share your design. You can record it once, share it to people, and they can watch it in their own time where they are at their best. And sometimes you never know who is going to be watching that design, that video of you presenting that work. And if you work in a very big company, who knows? One day somebody might actually approach you Hey Tim, I saw you present that work and that design. That's really nice work. And maybe you never met this person before, but they have seen the video of you presenting your work, talking about the work that you have done. So, as one technique that you can practice even tomorrow is to start getting used to recording short videos of yourself because it's going to help you have a lot of impact and influence by doing something once well and then resharing it multiple times. So you don't have to organize multiple meetings and then go to multiple meetings just to say the same thing again.
Okay. Uh, Thank you so much, Sam, for having answered for the questions. The last question is the same as the previous one, but we have already answered them. It's about how can I be myself, introverted, and actively working with others. I think that we have previously answered this. Uh, so
I happily to try and answer this if you want, or you can ask a second question. Up to you.
it is up to you, friend. See that you give some details answer for this question. There's no problem with this.
So one of the
And we have
things
only a few seconds before we wrap up. So go ahead.
Okay, cool. So one of the things I mentioned in the book is a very simple framework on how you actually make small talk. If you're designers on the call, I think most of you will be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? There are five levels. You start with physiological needs and then all the way up to self-actualization. Now, one of the most awkward things that I found when I was networking is I don't know how to introduce myself. I don't know how to make small talk. I don't know how to ask people how they are. But the nice thing about this framework is if you focus on topics like, food, talking about things that you notice in the networking room, how cold the air conditioning is, did they get that slice of pizza? Things that are lower in Maslow's hierarchy of needs actually have the widest applicability. Because when you think about it, talking about topics that are in the lower base, we actually have the maximum chance of actually being relatable to other people. Then it doesn't become so awkward to ask people about what they want to talk about because there are so many things that you could talk about. You could talk about having your favorite pet. You can be talking about sports. You can be talking about what people are noticing at the event. So, if you wanted to feel a lot more natural and authentic when it comes to networking, one of the common things that happens at the start is to really make small talk and introduce yourselves. Focus on topics that are on the lower sections of Maslow's hierarchy of needs because they are going to help you have the widest applicability. Back to you, Hazim.
You're welcome, my friend Sam. Thank you so much for your great session. It's really been amazing to have you over here today, our unique guest, Tim Yu. For all of the attendees, we're pleased also to have you over here today over our BeMore Festival. The ADB list I've been with you, having the my totally have get connected to you, uh, and even the attendees could get connected to each other with your fellow attendees and share this great event with others over LinkedIn and other social media so that we could spread the word to the maximum number of people and make the change that we really love over our community. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much, everybody. We are going to close right now and keep going on and move to another great sessions with our 8 Festival.